I'm Dan Hatchman from Hatch Shapes here, and today I'll be taking you through my method for laminating the top of a resin swirl surfboard. So it's actually this one. This is not the resin swirl video. I actually had a layer with the resin swirl in, and this is just a clear layer on the deck on top. So this is a bit different to usual. Usually you will have both deck layers going on at once, but in this case I already had the resin swirl on the deck and then I put another layer on top, and that is what we'll be watching today, and I'll be taking you through it. Alright, here we go. So first up, I've already catalyzed my resin with 1% MEKP, so this is polyester resin, and now I'm basically just trying to wet out all of the glass. You can see I have put my what do you call these, laminates, logos, rice paper logos under the glass there. This time I chose just to squeegee the resin into the logo, but you can also put some resin under the logo, lay the logo down, and then pull the glass back on top. You just need to work it a bit to get the bubbles out if you don't do that, which you can see I'm starting to do there. So it's all getting wet out. You can see the resin swirl I'd done before coming through pretty nicely. It's not exactly a quick process, this part, but you do need to be quite timely so the resin doesn't kick. So what's happening now is there's all these little bubbles in the fiberglass cloth, or under the fiberglass cloth, so I'm still wetting the nose out there, and I'm going through this cloth and trying to push down with a little bit of pressure, not so much that it bunches up the fiberglass, but just a little bit to push all of the bubbles out. So it looks like I've got most of the bubbles out here, and now I'm doing what is called wetting out the rails. In this case, I didn't do a full rail pour. A rail pour is where you pour resin like along the entire rail, and you can do that for a speed thing, but I had a lot of resin already up on the deck there, so I just utilized that. When I wet out the rails, especially for the deck, if you're doing 2 layers, which I'm not, but if I was, I like to hold the lap out so that way when I pull the resin down onto the lap, gravity works its way to, you know, get the resin into the lap to wet it out really nicely. Should also say I'm in southeast Queensland in the middle of summer right here, so I'm using something like 0.6% catalyst when the regular is like 1 or 2% catalyst. So that's a more regular rail pour right there. Obviously didn't have as much resin on this side. There you can see I'm holding it up, letting gravity bring some of the resin into the rail. So the lap needs to be literally completely saturated, like what you're seeing here. Otherwise it won't stick properly to the bottom of the board, and you get these like really ugly bubbles in, and it won't bond properly when you wrap it around. So this part is quite a time-consuming process, but you can really see my nice resin swirl that I did on the previous layer on the deck come through. Yeah. Wetting out the rail. It's starting to look nice and saturated there. You can see I've made some relief cuts at the tail and at the nose. At the nose I did a cut where, if you think about like the fiberglass being cut around, I make 2 cuts, like 1, 2, so it's got this little V which can be tucked over the nose, and I'm just wetting that out there. You can see I'm wearing the butyl gloves, and I'm wearing 2 pairs of them, but they're really crap. I don't recommend them. The latex gloves are a lot more resistant to polyester resin. I just couldn't get my hands on any at this particular point in time. So get yourself some of those like thick rubber gloves, or the latex gloves have a lot higher resistance to polyester resin. And on my left hand, I would still recommend putting 2, because I use it to basically use it to wet the resin out by holding my hand under it. It gets covered in resin. So yeah, it's a good idea to wear two pairs of 2 disposable gloves, one on top of each other. Yeah, there's some not quite that clean cuts there that Lil's showing off in that video. But that's okay, those stand out, it's not too bad. Okay, so now I'm tucking the lap. You can see my technique there. So you start from the middle and work outwards, sticking the lap up onto the board. And then I do the tail. I've missed a bit on the end, but I promise I come back for it. If you get any crinkles in it, sometimes it's worthwhile to pull the lap completely off again in that part and press it back up to get rid of the folds. Yeah, but this is where it's super important that your lap has been like completely saturated, and by this point the resin is usually kicking, so it's starting to get like a more tacky texture. Alright, I guess that's the end. Basically after that I will go around with my squeegee looking under the laps and dragging any droplets off, and then drag any droplets off, and sometimes if it's got like a little line of like bead of resin, I will just wipe it with my glove finger just lightly. This is before it hardens. Go around and check everywhere, that make sure it doesn't have any air bubbles. If it has any air bubbles, draw some more resin from somewhere and push it back in to try and get rid of those last air bubbles. And that's about it. Then I wait for it to harden, and if it's a very clean lamination, which I usually aim for, getting a lot better than I was, I tell you that, then I'll just use like an 80 grit grind pad to grind down the edge of the lap to make it smoother for my hot coat. Or if it's a bit more of a rough lamination, I will paint the laps with sanding resin. So just my regular polyester resin, and I'll add like 5%-ish of wax and styrene solution, which you can get from your surfboard manufacturer store, and then you can sand it out a lot cleaner, and you have to worry less about hitting the foam. I mean, you don't have to worry about hitting the foam on the top because the bottom's already laminated, but if it's the bottom, then yeah, that's very useful. Alright, thanks so much for watching. Forgot to mention, like and subscribe for more content like this. Got lots of good stuff coming, lots of surfing tutorials. I'm planning to do some trick tips where I look at common maneuvers that everyone wants to do in surfing, and the common mistakes when people try to do it, and what they need to do to overcome those barriers. So stay tuned, as well as more tips for board building. Cheers!